And welcome back to the Op Show, where we bring in the trials and tribulations, the automations and collaborations from the world of DevOps and the developer experience. I'm your host, Tristan Pollock. And in our best show yet, we have two guests for the first time, Ali Hamidi and DeVaris Brown of Meroxa, a data infrastructure platform. DeVaris is also director of product management at Heroku, and Ali was a lead software engineer. So excited to also hear a little bit about Heroku and all the love that comes around that product. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
So we always like to start out the show with a little bit of the code story, like, how'd you get into software? DeVaris, you want to go first and then Ali second?
Yeah, I got into software. My mom actually is a director of quality assurance, and it's probably gonna make Ali laugh because me and him have had conversations about the role of QA at Meroxa. But my mom worked as a QA person for a very long time, and she worked at startups. And so when they would give her a book allowance in the first .com boom, she let me get a little bit of that money, and I taught myself how to program. And then one day they were like, "Yo, we need engineers," and I was like 14. I was like, "I could code. And I ended up working on. It was basically like an agency, so I worked on a few products, like classic ASP products, MVP.com. It was a sports memorabilia site back in the day. I think AT&T's Billing Edge or something like that. I taught myself how to program. Went to college. Ended up getting my research project, commercialized by Microsoft, and that's how I started off as an engineer.
I love it. Did you getting into being self-taught and getting into programming? Did you have like a musical stint too? I've seen. Like that's like 70% of the people on the show, like who are, especially if they're self-taught, they like had like this attraction to doing the.
Yeah, I basically taught myself. Well, I was in band all the way up and through, so taught myself how to DJ and like all that type of stuff. So yeah, that's kind of me. I still play a little bit of piano, still do all that type of stuff. Make music. That's like kind of like my release. Like next to me is like my DJ booth setup, and
nice.
Is my Ableton push. All right, so
cool.
We always music is a part of that.
I love that. And Ali, tell me a little bit about how you got into code and started basically co-founding this company.
Sure. So I think my background's a little bit more traditional than DeVaris's. So my older brother was always into sort of computers growing up, and he studied computer science. He's 9 years older than I am, so that's quite a big difference. But he was kind of the inspiration for me to get into coding in general. And then I studied computer science at university as well. And my first job was writing a Java-based installer for network management software. So it was a fairly interesting experience. And then, from then I moved on to do a bunch of other stuff. Ultimately landing at Heroku and sort of meeting DeVaris there, and then doing Meroxa now.
A little bit about Meroxa.
Say it one more time, man. You were breaking up just a little bit.
Oh, sorry. How did you guys meet and start Meroxa, and tell us a little bit about Meroxa?
Yeah. So we met because Ali and I would. I think we met first on like a Heroku offsite. We had like an offsite, and then we started talking, and we just got cool because there's not many brown folks in tech, so we just started talking to each other. And then I think maybe that next week or two, like me and him had like 5 back-to-back customer on-sites where we were paired with each other, and we essentially heard the same feedback. It's like, yo, it's super dope that Heroku allows you to click a button and provision a web app, but or data component, Postgres, Redis, or Kafka. But what we really need is like the Heroku for orchestrating data between those components. And so Ali and I basically just say, yo, let's try to figure this out. How can we do this at Heroku? Some time went by, and like, we chased it up the flagpole, and they were just like, yeah, we're going to switch strategic directions to focus mostly on Salesforce data and developer experience. And Ali and I were like, yeah, probably not. And so we got together again and essentially just drew up what Meroxa would be. I mean, it's funny, like I shared the initial like system design that we had, and I think we were pretty accurate. Like, I mean, it's still held up to this day, which I think is kind of cool. And yeah, I mean, that's really how we started. And I mean, it's been great. I took 3 months from September to January before we went to an accelerator to go talk to a whole bunch of data analysts, data engineers, and data scientists to figure out like what tools they were using and like all that type of stuff. And so by the time Ali was ready to come join in January, like we basically had the whole, like basically our 2-3 year roadmap knocked out, because we just, from our own personal experience, listening to our customers, and then like, our field research, we figured it out. So yeah, that's the genesis of Meroxa. I can tell you where the name comes from. It's actually kind of cool.
Yeah, I would love to hear that.
Well, I mean, this is basically I was up one night watching Wicked Tuna after dinner on National Geographic, and like some, thing about oil pipelines came on. So the Dangote refinery is getting built in West Africa. It's going to be the largest oil refinery on the continent. And they were talking about the Meroxa process, which takes sulfates out of kerosene, which is jet fuel. And so Ali, both and I came from Salesforce. They used to say data's the new oil. So basically what we say is like, if data's the new oil, we want to power the refinery. So that's how we got the name Meroxa.
Clean it, clean the product, make it understandable.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I know, Ali, I think you got a little bit like a short demo just for us to kind of like see behind the scenes a little bit. Maybe now's a good time to pull it up, and we can kind of, get a firsthand take of what you guys are talking about.
Sure.
All right, let me throw it up right now. Are you ready for me to share your screen?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So hopefully I don't get hit with the curse of the live demo. But just to provide some background, essentially the Meroxa data platform is designed to sort of find siloed data wherever it sort of resides in your organization, and make it super easy to pull that data out and put it into essentially a flexible event stream format. And then you can sort of build applications on top of that and leverage that data better, take more advantage out of that data. And so this is a very highly contrived example, but the idea is to kind of demonstrate the power of the Meroxa platform in getting data out of different data sources. And so essentially what I have here is I created a Postgres database earlier. So it's I'm P-SQL'd into it. And so it just has one table, an accounts table. And so essentially what I'm going to demo is pulling data out of that Postgres database and then putting it into other places. And so on the left, I've got an S3 bucket, and it's empty. And then I also have a Redshift cluster that is also empty. And so essentially, I'm going to start by creating a connection, a connector from that Postgres database into the Meroxa platform. And so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit and do this. So here I'm using the Meroxa CLI. I'm creating a connector from PG demo, which is the demo Postgres database. I'm calling it account source, and I'm setting the input as the accounts table. And so there's that. So like a ton of stuff happened behind the scenes. It's fairly straightforward on the CLI, but essentially the Meroxa platform knows about the Postgres database. It knows how to connect it. It knows everything about it. And then it figures out the best way to create a connector and pull data out. And so I can use connectors. And so now essentially you can see that it's running and it's pulling data from that Postgres database, from that accounts table, and it's streaming it into this internal stream. And so it's actually setting up a CDC stream, so change data capture. So anything that changes on that database will get pulled out and and mapped into the stream. And then I can basically hang additional connectors off that stream and pour it into other places. And so to demonstrate that, I'm going to create a connector into S3. So I'm just going to... So I'm going to save myself from some typing errors, but I'm going to... So here, I'm just telling it to take the output of the other stream as the input for this one. And so essentially read whatever is in that stream and write it into S3. And so we have that created as well. And so similarly, it looks at the data, it knows what the schema is, it knows what that structure is, it knows how to write to S3. And so now, essentially, traffic should be pulled in from the Postgres database and written out. So I'm just going to do an insert. I wrote a record into the database. It's a very sort of contrived example. It's just my name and my email address. And then in a few seconds, we should see that it's actually pulled that record out of Postgres, written it into a stream, mapped that sort of schema out into what the object should look like, and then write it out into S3. And it does it in sort of a continuous fashion as a stream, not really in batches. It just takes a minute or so to fire up. In the meantime, I can actually create the Redshift connector as well. So similarly, I'm just going to consume this as the input. All right. And so now, similarly, actually, let me check. So there we go. It's created the prefixed sort of bucket, and it's actually starting to write records in there. And so the records are written in gzip, sort of one record per row format. And so as the database sees changes, you update, you delete things. All those changes will get streamed into the Meroxa platform, and they'll get picked up by the subsequent sync connector and actually written out into S3. And similarly, just by tapping into that same stream that's sort of continuously being read, we've pulled out this. So now it actually looks at the format and it creates the schemas and everything. And so one of the cool things that we handle is sort of schema evolution. So if I go in and then I add a new field or I cast a different type, provided that it's a straightforward migration that we can automate, then we will do it. So if I add another field, it'll actually detect that, oh, the schema has changed, there's a new field now. So it'll generate the DDL and execute it on the downstream syncs. So yeah, that's great. Sort of a short, quick demo just to show what it is and how it works.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as you guys, and I'll just take this down here. As you guys were thinking about how to kind of visualize and manage some of this data, like what are some of the thought processes, or how do you take advantage of this this wealth of data while still making it kind of observable and understandable?
Yeah. So one of the things that we thought pretty hard about is how can we play nicely in this sort of existing operations heavy sort of DevOps ecosystem. And so one of the things that we do is we expose a Prometheus endpoint. And so if you're heavily into that ecosystem, you might have Grafana set up or Thanos or some equivalent systems. We actually expose all the metrics within our infrastructure through a Prometheus endpoint that you can tap into. And so coming from Heroku, our focus on developer experiences is pretty significant. And so the way we've been thinking about things is we'd like to make things work very easily out of the box. You should be able to execute command, and you should do the right thing for the vast majority of people. But sort of in sort of deviating from the heavily opinionated, borderline restrictive sort of Heroku model, we've taken the approach that we want it to work for the most part out of the box with a simple command, but also allow you to customize and tweak things to go a little deeper. And so, following that thinking, our dashboard, which we're currently developing, will show you what we think are the key metrics in order for you to troubleshoot things or or scale things or make decisions on. But through the Prometheus endpoint, we actually export everything. And so you can, look at the kitchen sink. If you know exactly what it is that you want, you can get that sort of raw detail. And similarly with configuring connectors, we've taken the same approach. You type the one command, we look at the resource, we figure out the best way that we think to get the data out. But actually, you can override any configuration. If you happen to know that your particular workload or your organization has some sort of particular thing that you want to tweak, you can actually set that, and we will merge the configuration in and do it. So it's
that's nice. So you have this combination of like customization and personalization, depending on like what level of user or depth you want. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that's our mantra is like to be prescriptive with control, right? Like that's just one of the you talk about our Heroku backgrounds, like that was the big thing that people had an issue with, was like it was just too much of a black box. So we've basically just figured out the balance of that and how we architected the product.
Yeah, I like that. We had a question from the community a little bit about that Heroku background. The question was, being a part of a larger org sometimes means sacrificing iterative exploration and in lieu of maintaining product standards. So curious, as a product manager, if you had the green field to improve an aspect of the product or introduce a new feature, what would it be?
At Heroku?
I think it's speaking about Heroku, but you could talk about it because I feel like you're kind of already talked about that with the Meroxa side. But
yeah, man, it's so much. The funny thing is, me and Ali talk about this all the time when we see startups that are like unbundling Heroku, right? Like there's like a bunch of like review app startups or like these like app orchestration or workflow startups. So funny story. My first offsite, we basically planned. It was called Heroku Steps, or something like that, and it basically was GitHub Actions, right?
Oh,
and
really?
So,
okay.
Yeah. So exclusive break. Air horn. Yeah, that was kind of that was the first product that I had pitched, because our pipeline product wasn't necessarily a pipeline product. Like, there were things that you needed to do underneath the hood or like in between stages. And so I had pitched this whole thing about like, just having steps or actions or I think the steps are what they were called. So that was one thing. Another thing that I wanted to do was support for single page apps. Like Heroku's great for backend web services. And if you include a build pack, you can do some React, or if you bundle your Ember app or any other JS app, single page app with a Node application or Ruby application, like it works, but like it just wasn't a first class citizen. So those are the two main things that I wanted to do that we had. It's funny enough, we had underneath the hood and they were working, but just never saw the light of day.
And so the Heroku steps didn't actually, you didn't move forward with it.
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What about you, Ali? What was there on the data side that you want to do other than build Meroxa? But
yeah, this is likely to be super controversial. But when Heroku first started, they had the idea, like the original founders had this really strong belief of ephemeralization, which is incredibly hard to pronounce. But the idea that if the platform provider, AWS in this case, was providing a core functionality that was good enough, then you should adopt that rather than write your own and sort of move up the stack. And I think that kind of thinking is brilliant. And this is something that we've pulled over to Meroxa for sure. And so I think there are actually a lot of aspects as moving along with Heroku that I think could have been more aggressively ephemeralized and sort of offloaded to AWS or GCP. I think like the Heroku Postgres was one of the original Postgres products. It was fantastic, and it was so far ahead of all the other managed services for a long time. But since then, RDS has really sort of caught up, and like Aurora in particular is an excellent product and handles a lot of the scaling aspects. So I would have loved for us at Heroku at the time to have something like Heroku Postgres powered by AWS Aurora, and actually like swap out the underlying engine with that, and then that would free us to build out sort of higher level abstractions on top of it, which is kind of what we're trying to do with Meroxa.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things there, right? Is like we always used to say internally that we are a value-added reseller of AWS, which is basically the truth, right? like we were just the veneer on top of AWS that made it a little more approachable and usable.
A lot more approachable.
Yeah. I mean, I was being humble, man.
Yeah.
But the other thing is like with Meroxa, we always say we're system engineers first, software engineers second, right? And like that's what's given us the ability to build a great resilient product, get it out to the market fast because we're expert curators, right? Like the thing that I would say that Ali, I tell him to beat his chest or puff his chest out a little bit more about this is like, Heroku was doing hundreds of millions of requests a minute on Kafka for thousands of clusters or thousands of customers for tens of thousands of clusters. And the team at its height was 6 people, right?
Wow.
Now, contrast that with, you pick a Fangma company, they got teams of 200 or so making 500 grand plus a year doing the same things that our team did, right? And so like we've taken that knowledge of how to run and manage platform for the vast majority of people and brought that to the platform that we're building with Meroxa. So
I gotcha. Yeah, that's a good explanation. So one thing I'm kind of always curious to hear is just like about your personal workflows. What do you guys do? What are some of your favorite tools? How do you stay productive? How do you get into a flow state? Like, what are some of these things you do when you think about, when you're, are building a startup, building a product, and you're trying to stay, as productive as possible with the resources you have?
Yeah, I mean, when Ali talks to you, he'll give you a Vim lesson. I troll him about this all the time, right? But for me as a CEO, right, like and a product person and sometime engineer, right, like, my tools are a lot different than his, right? And so for me, Notion and Jira is basically in Figma is essentially where my life is today. When I need to dive into some code, then it's VS Code. How I get into a perfect flow state. I got my mood lamp back here that you see is glowing right now. Like 5 pair of headphones. I listen to DJ Raphael on YouTube to get into like the little chill hop instrumental.
Oh yeah.
Like all that type of stuff. And like I basically at the beginning of my day, I just write a to-do list and essentially just kind of chunk through it, right? And just get through my to-do list. I use Todoist for that as well. And then at every hour, I just get, every 20, 30 minutes, I get up and, kind of lightweight Pomodoro method. But like, that's kind of how I do my day. So, and then I block my calendar out. Like now I have the ability to like say, here's what working time is and here's what meeting time is. So I have to be very intentional about that stuff.
Yeah, super valuable. Yeah, like the Pomodoro has been a very popular way for people to stay focused and kind of get things done. I love the chill hop thing. We're friends with a kind of an online software engineer influencer called Mayuko, and she does this like Twitch stream called Muko's Cafe that's like all that sort of music, and I was like, this is like the perfect music for trying to get into the zone. So yeah, I echo that. I'm gonna look up DJ Raphael.
Yeah, I'll make sure I send that to you after the show. But
okay, please do. We'll drop that in the description too.
Yeah.
Ali, what do you do?
Yeah, I guess it's fairly similar, but being sort of more on the technical side, that there's some things. One sort of aside is I tend to try to pack all of our meetings into the beginning of the week. So like Mondays are sort of pretty meeting intense. But the idea is to sort of get that out of the way, and so you have a little bit more time to focus throughout the rest of the week. Another thing that we try to do quite a bit is sort of pair program, and we've been using Tuple or Tuple, depending on how you pronounce it. It is a surprisingly excellent product. It's relatively new, and sort of in the past I've used Screen Hero before Slack acquired it, and we tried like Google Meet and all sorts of other products, but Tuple is super responsive and really lightweight, and it's just fantastic. So I really like that. It's really, really good. I'll
have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's definitely a good one.
And do you have some favorite tools? Like, what do you guys build Meroxa on?
So in terms of our sort of deployment sort of platform. We kind of have an interesting sort of setup. One thing, in order to provide some context, the way the product exists is essentially we have a control plane, which is a collection of Go services. And then we have the data plane, which is a collection of open source components, including Kafka, Kafka Connect, some Go services that are written by us, some community provided services. And so the entirety of the data plane is open source. And so we have this sort of interesting split where we actually provision things inside an AWS account. And so everything that we deploy for the distributed data plane is on Kubernetes. And so like one of the sort of killer tools for us introduced by one of our engineers, Owen, was the idea of pushing everything into Minikube, which is like a lightweight sort of shrunk down Kubernetes cluster. And so we use that internally for like our CI and for local development. And so we actually stand up the entirety of the platform, including the control plane and the distributed data plane. And so you basically have like one command and you can stand up the entire thing locally. And you can run all your tests and you can experiment and you can do whatever you want. And we take that same setup of this Minikube Kubernetes cluster and run it inside CI. So as part of our acceptance tests, we actually stand up the entire platform, configure connectors, push traffic through, watch it go all the way out. And yeah, that's been incredible. Being able to have that sort of parity between what the production environment looks like and what you can run locally and what you can run in CI has been great.
Yeah, that sounds really slick. I'm not as familiar with the Minikube. So basically that is just kind of a layer on top of your K8s.
It is Kubernetes. It's like a distribution of Kubernetes designed for sort of edge deployment or running it locally. It's like super lightweight and sort of boots quickly and doesn't use much resources. It's cool.
Cool. Yeah, it sounds like you've got everything taken care of and like simplified enough so it's not overly complex.
Yeah, we also leverage sort of chat ops quite a bit. So whether you're making infrastructure changes, so we use Terraform Cloud to make changes to our sort of AWS account, or if you're pushing code, then both of those systems run all the tests. They get everything ready in staging, and then you get a message that pops into Slack that says, like, this is what was just deployed. Here's a link to the changelog pulled from your sort of Git commits, and you can hit the approve button, and it'll actually package it and deploy it. And so, yeah, sort of having that set up really nicely helps, keep velocity, and also you can't really do that unless you have sort of confidence in the test framework and CI and all that stuff. So yeah, I think we've arrived at a pretty sweet setup now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, DeVaris.
No, I was going to say, man, it was crazy. Ali, it's just a testament of how focused execution and proper planning can help you, zoom faster. And this is the advice I give to any founder, right? Like people I invest in or people that ask me, because I worked at Heroku, like how can I help them? The main thing is just like having a focused plan. And so was earlier on in our journey, we talked to some folks over at a large video streaming company, and they essentially, prolific in open source, right? Like they release a ton of open source projects, and especially along the ops and data realm, right? And we basically, like, the guy's an advisor for us, and we were basically walking through the demo like we did with you earlier. He goes, "Wait, how long have you guys been developing this?" And we were just like, about 3 months, 3.5 months or something like that. And he goes, "That's interesting." He says, let me, can I share my screen? Can I show you something? And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Why not, man?" And so he walks through basically Meroxa, what it looks like internally to their company. And he says, "Look, I've had 20 engineers making over $500,000 working on this for the past 2 years, and they haven't got to the level of sophistication that you guys had." And, it was just like, "Hey, do you want to come work for us?" I'm like, I mean, if this doesn't work out, we'll definitely go grab that bag. But right now, it's just like we see the opportunity, right? Which is like, look, all the big companies have this infrastructure in place, but they have armies of people that are dedicated to maintaining it, right? Like, could you imagine if the power of, now the 1-2 person startup can use the same type of real-time infrastructure that all the FANGMA companies have, right? And like that's what our real big bet is. It's just making this more accessible and more approachable, so you can use it for analytics and your engineering operations. So like that's really a testament to having focused execution, knowing who your customer is, knowing who your users are, knowing the difference between the two, and then pushing a product that services their needs, that focuses on their issues and making sure that they're more productive. Because like data engineering is a thankless job. Nobody cares about it until they see that big ass dip in your analytics graph, where it's like, don't pay attention to that. We had some data quality issues there, but the rest of the graph is good. And you're like, wait, why wouldn't I pay attention to that? And why would I assume that the rest of the graph is good if this is the, So we're basically just trying to be the Lucius Fox to the data engineering's Batman.
Oh wow, I like that. Lucius Fox to the data engineering Batman. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I love the accessibility of it. Like you're saying, like trying to help all these basically anyone who wants this level of quality be able to reach it, and you don't need this huge engineering team. You don't need to be a FANG company. Like that's cool, because I think that just empowers so many builders within software to be able to do so much more. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I guess going forward, like what, how do you see some of the trends within this space? Like, how are you thinking about, be matching what, is going to be happening over the next few years in data or, in the greater developer space? Like, what are some of the big trends that you see now that we're kind of coming to the end of the year, starting to look forward to a new beginning, hopefully in 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take some of this, and I know Ali has his opinions, but number one is, look, the data warehouse becomes more of a vital part of people's day-to-day business operations. And so you're already starting to see a vast swath of these like operationalized data warehouse companies that are out there. So it's like, oh, if your data's in the data warehouse, we're just going to take it out and make it available to some SaaS products or something like that, right? And so you're going to see a lot of that. You're going to see more tools like bundled together. So like, we went through this bundling, then unbundling to like open source to like now people are like, well, now we need to bundle these things again because none of these things talk together well. So like that's also going to be something that you're going to start to see more bundles of things. So like observability and tracing at the same time, or you like all this type of stuff, right? You're going to see higher level abstractions on top of Kubernetes, right? Like to spin up a Kubernetes cluster still is a choose your own adventure battle. And so, there's going to be more companies like CTO.ai and like Octito and some of these other folks. They're going to have higher level abstractions. So like, you don't care that it's Kubernetes. You just care that you get all the good parts of Kubernetes, right? And then in the data realm, you're going to start to see more levels of abstraction, right? Which are, folks like us, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Meroxa. We are going to take a more platformatized approach to the streaming world, right? And so the way I've basically been calling folks Hadoop refugees, right? So you go from Hadoop camp, like get everything in HDFS. Now it's like, oh, get everything over into the data warehouse. So you go from like batch to micro batch. And now folks are going to get to streaming. Like more folks are going to start doing streaming and are going to start realizing that these like customer data platforms like a Segment, a Trade, Matillion, all those types of things, they aren't really doing the job that you need it to. So that's kind of where I think some of the trends are going. Obviously, I'm a little biased in some of those areas, but that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, no, that's actually, that's helpful and well said.
What about you, Ali?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said. Well, pretty much everything that you said. But another area where I think we're going to see a lot more sort of activity is moving towards more specialized data databases and data sort of products again. So I think there was a trend at one point where you'd have very specific things. If you're putting your time series data, you'd put it into something like Graphite or whatever it is. And then there was a move to kind of generalize it and pull it back out into, Postgres with all these extensions and all these other things. But then now, as businesses and companies are generating tons more data, and the data is a lot more specialized, I think I can definitely see a move back into those more specialized data sources. And so that's where I think tooling around making access to these sort of more specialized data sources a little bit easier. I think there's definitely a ton of work left to be done there. I also think areas like data hygiene and data quality is still super nascent, and data quality is sort of a major problem. So more companies are creating tons more data, and the quality is generally bad. Like it's pretty hard to get good quality data out of all of your sort of disparate data sources and sort of provide that consistency and sort of uniformity with, whether it's IDs or formats and sort of correlation between user IDs across different services. So I think that push is definitely, we're just starting to see it now, but I think there's going to be tons of people really focusing their attention on that, including ourselves, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it's interesting with all the big, these big data companies just ballooning and like snowball and all this hype, and it's like it makes perfect sense that like there's got to be better ways to understand, visualize, just move it forward, especially like you said, consistently.
We say this all the time. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you sell cattle or you ship boxes or you provide professional services, you are a data company now. You're producing tons of data. You need to make use of that data in order to succeed. And if you aren't sort of taking advantage of your data, then you're unlikely to succeed. And so, people need better tools. They need to make better use of that data. So I think it's kind of inevitable.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Everything is becoming so much about the data. As we kind of start to wrap up here, like where can we find you guys online? Any shout outs, any last words that you'd like to share?
You can find us at Meroxa.com, Meroxa.com. Sign up for the beta inside of there. There's a like an email field for you to go ahead and sign up. You can check us out at Meroxa Data on Twitter, I believe is our thing, as our handle. But you can check us out on me or Ali. I'm on Twitter at DeVaris P. Brown. Ali I think he's on Twitter.
Hamidi.
Yep, Hamidi. So we're not very active, but we kind of are at the same time because building the company.
Got a lot going on,
But definitely want to shout out our team: Janae, TJ, Owen, Micah, Brett, James, Sarah, Dylan. Y'all are the gasoline that makes this engine go. And shout out to my mama for always believing in me.
Love that.
That
was definitely the best shout out so far.
Man. She made all this possible. 37 years ago. So thank you.
She inspired you getting into code in the first place, right? Like,
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. Also, when I mentioned that we are, of course, hiring, and so we're aggressively growing. And so, if you're interested in writing Go at scale and or working on open source products, we'll definitely like to talk to you.
Yeah, I mean, like we're at this point. Like, if you can spell Kafka, we'll have a decent conversation with you. But we're definitely hiring experienced Go engineers. So anybody that's looking out for us, go to jobs.lever.co/Meroxa, and you can go apply. For the jobs that we have listed there. Definitely looking for back-end folks. We're all set on the front end. We got a glutton of those folks, but we definitely need some more experienced back-end folks. Yeah,
I love that. So, and when are these remote, or how are you kind of looking at this?
We hire anywhere and everywhere. We want the illest dude and illest person in Omaha, Nebraska. I don't care where you're at. If you are talented, come to us. And I mean, just on some like, kind of like cultural things, right? Like, we pay people pretty good. Like, we pay people like adults, so you don't have to worry about that. Work-life balance is pretty good. You know, I would say so because like we all got stuff to do. And so that's why we prize focus, execution, and collaboration. So we just don't work on anything. We work on the right things. Right. And so like that helps reduce some of that startup thrash. You know, we got good benefits and all that good stuff. So if you're anywhere in the world and you hear this and you're like, yo, that's me, go to, apply again, jobs.libra.co/Meroxa. You can send me or Ali an email. We're at ali@meroxa.io or DeVaris@meroxa.io. If you got any questions, just holler at us. Like we're pretty approachable. So
yeah, we were remote first pre-COVID, and we'll continue to be remote first post-COVID and forever, hopefully.
Yep,
that's great. Yeah, I love to see that transition of companies moving into this space of flexibility. I mean, it sounds like you guys are being super thoughtful, with the work-life balance, we're being remote first. Like, I just think that is just, it's so much more helpful for people when they're looking just to find great work and do great work, but like focus and be super productive during the time that they have, not just trying to just pile on hours. And it sounds a lot like our culture at CTO.ai. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's funny, like in the age of the internet, people still want you to come into an office. Like, it's like, for what reason? All right. Like I get, maybe quarterly sync ups and stuff like that. But like day to day, why do I need to be in the office other than just to get away from my kids or something? But yeah, man, I just think like, me and Ali have been working remote since our Heroku days. Right. Like, I mean, obviously, he's in Sacramento. I'm in the Bay Area, right? Like it's basically a long distance relationship at this point. But like we have been remote from day one since we've known each other. So it just made sense. I mean, maybe for vanity reasons, we can get a building with our name on the side of it. But I think I'm going to be like, we're going to put a Meroxa billboards in a bunch of cities and just do that once and call it a day. So I can just have my mom point and be like, oh, that's my baby. And that's it. Right. Like, that's it.
Yeah. Well, thanks you guys so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for showing us the platform and giving us a little bit of insight into the future of data and the developer experience. And that's it for today. So thank you, and I'll take us out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.